Let me think about that for a second. Can we redesign the Honda S2000? Yes, we can. Alright, so before we jump into the redesign of this video, I want to talk to you about the design of the S2000 and some of the key lines that I want to bring into this new redesign. So to me, the S2000 is a timeless design, and the reason I say that is because it's such a clean design and the proportions are just razor sharp and spot on. So even if you look at the SSM concept, it could be a concept that's produced today if you just change a few details such as the lighting and so on and upgrade those into modern standards. But I want to try to find some key graphical elements and the proportions are going to be there in the redesign, but we also need some graphical elements to make it recognizable as a Honda and of course as an S2000. So the first line that I'm interested in is this one right here. The lower line of the car, which goes all the way from the side and stretches into the front fender. And the specific part of this line or graphical element is this part here. So I want to take this shape and turn that into something modern, but still have the resemblance of that indent in the lower part of the car. So I want to keep this, but play around with the line and have some graphical elements in the redesign as well. And for the AP2 model, and this is the S2000 AP2, which is the facelifted model, we have these fins in the front. I want to keep those as well, but this time with the redesign, I want to implement them into the front, the overall front shape, so into the front bumper, and maybe stretch it all the way up to the hood. So we might have some line that goes something like this down here, and then goes into the fins and creates some graphical elements down here. Now I talked about this before, and I think this is a trend right now with car design, is that instead of having headlight assemblies being flush with the surface of the car, I think a lot of companies nowadays, they make huge holes or spaces that goes in the body of the car, and inside of that they have the headlight assembly. So I want to do something similar to that as well and have some resemblance to the NSX as well. So we're gonna have some fun with that and try to come up with some design features that would fit a new Honda S2000, but at the same time make sure that it fits the overall Honda design family. Now there is one specific design feature on this car that I absolutely love, and it's one of my all-time favorite car design details, if you want to call it that, and that is this view right here. To be able to see this, you really have to be standing very close to the front of the car and look down on it, otherwise you're not really going to notice it. But the thing that I love is this curve right here. So we have these massive front fenders that goes down like this, and it kind of looks like the car is planted and like the front axle is on a track. And to me, I just think this looks absolutely beautiful, and it's one of my favorite angles of any car of all time. I think I have a better picture right here, and you can see how massive these front fenders are from this view. And another thing I love about this is from this view that you can see that all of the lines are kind of converging into the front, into the front bumper and the air intake up here. So we have these lines right here. We also have the overall fenders and the headlights pointing this way on both sides, obviously. And of course we have this silhouette if you look at it from the top. And all of this just creates a very powerful and beautiful shape when you look at it from this view. And if you look at it back from the front, it kind of looks like a shark mouth in the front there, and that's what I want to keep in the redesign. I'm pretty sure there is a body kit that they even call shark, or it's called like shark mouth or something like that, and it emphasizes the sharpness of this design even more. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this shape and sharpen everything up, make it more modern. This still has some 90s curvature to it, and I want to sharpen everything up, keep the key lines as I talked about here, and create something really cool. So I'm gonna do something different this time, or usually I take a picture like this and sketch on top of it, but this time we're gonna start from scratch, a blank canvas. That way we have complete freedom of proportions, lines, and everything that we want, and that's what we're going to do right now. Now, before we get into the sketching part, just make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you get notified when new videos are uploaded every single week. So this was the first sketch of the day, and when I start my day sketching, I always like to start with pen and paper, and this time is no different. One of the reasons I like to start with pen and paper like this, especially if I'm going to do a redesign, is to get a feel of the car. You can look at pictures as much as you want from all kinds of angles, but you're still not gonna get the sense of the proportions of the car unless you put it down yourself on paper, and that's what I'm doing right here. So I'm just starting with a simple big pen, blocking out the shape of this car and thinking about the wheelbase and so on to get the proportions right. And once I'm done with the big pen, I'm gonna jump into a couple of markers. I'm gonna use a Cool Gray 2 and a black marker to finish this off. If you're trying to do redesigns yourself, I would seriously recommend getting comfortable sketching cars with pen and paper first, because it's going to make the work in Photoshop so much easier if you have the basics and the fundamentals down. So now that we're done with this doodle, let's jump into Photoshop and let's redesign the Honda S2000, and let's make it a 2020 model. The Honda S2000 story starts back in 1995 when Honda presented the Honda SSM concept car. You can clearly see the resemblance to the production car in this concept car, and honestly the overall design of the S2000 to me is kind of timeless with its super sharp and simple proportions. And the proof of that is that if you look at the concept car, to me, all you gotta do is change the headlights and upgrade those to modern LEDs, and it could be a concept car that was presented in 2020. The S2000 was designed by Daisuke Sawai and Shigeru Ohara. Ohara was also responsible for the Honda NSX, which he and his design team developed in close collaboration with his friend and now legend Ayrton Senna. Honda introduced the production model in 1999, and this was called the S2000 AP1. It had a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 240 horsepower mated with a 6-speed manual transmission. This naturally aspirated engine was notable for its power output of 124 horsepower per liter, and this was something remarkable to see in a production car of this time. In 2004, the Honda S2000 got its first and only facelift with the AP2 model, and the changes included some cosmetic changes to the front and rear bumper, revised headlight assemblies, new LED taillights, and oval exhaust pipes. And this AP2 design is what we're taking inspiration from in this redesign. So talking about the design here and what we're doing in Photoshop, I started with a line sketch, and that line sketch is going to guide the rest of the sketch and where I want to put highlights, where I put the shades, and that means where I'm going to put the white airbrush and the black airbrush and define and sculpt this design as we move along. And it's almost like I would compare it to if you're doing 3D renders, you hit, for example in Keyshot, and you hit render, it's going to slowly, at least when I was in school, I don't know if it's still that slow right now, but I haven't done it in a long time. But if you hit render, it's slowly going to become more and more clear what it is you're rendering. It goes all across the image until you have a really sharp final render. And that's pretty much what we're doing here, but in a more analog way. So I wanted to really focus on the nose of this car and the sharpness of the design in general, and keep that sharpness as we talked about earlier, and take it a step further. Another thing that I wanted to do was to implement this new, I guess we could call it a trend, where you have the holes in the front of the car, in the fascia of the car, and then you put the headlights inside of those holes. And that's what I wanted to do with this S2000 as well. Pretty much, you can think of it like this. We take the we keep the original proportions because they are timeless to me, and the original S2000 is already a beautiful car. So let's not mess with the proportions. Instead, we want to sharpen the graphics up around the S2000 and think about how Hondas look today and take some cues from those models and implement that in this redesign. I had some issues with the front part here. To me, I thought it looked too horizontal, so I wanted to add something to break that up. And that's where I extended the front air intake, the black hole in the air intake, and made a curvature that goes up to the light and pretty much follows the same curvature as the front fenders that goes above the wheel. So we have that same curve that goes down and then continues through the headlights down to the air intake below. As I mentioned in the intro, I wanted to keep that side graphic but make something different. So what I did is I added an angle at the end of it to have it tilt down, and that downward angle could continue if we make a rear view of this car. We can have that line continue and maybe go into a diffuser so we have the same line continuing all around the car and flows around the back as well. So when you do renders like this, you want to have a focal point, and the focal point usually is the point that is closest to the observer or the camera, and in this case it's the left front corner of the car. So what does that mean? It means that in that corner we need to add more detail because that's what this sketch is focusing on. And if you work as a designer, you work like this and you focus on different parts, so you sketch the cars in different angles and you add more detail to the part that is closest to the camera. But at the same time, we need to visualize at least where the car ends. And I do that by just adding a stroke of airbrush and then erasing the spoiler at the back or the ducktail, so you can see that there is something going on in the back. So we're almost finished with this S2000 redesign. I really hope you like the end result. Me personally, I really love this sketch. I hope Honda would make something like this and create a successor to the S2000, because honestly I think we need more sports cars and more fun cars today. I think a lot of manufacturers are thinking too much about practicality and being politically correct, and I think the S2000 would just be a good addition to that conversation. I want to thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today. If you like this kind of videos, check out my playlist called Car Makeovers. I'm gonna link it up in the corner right here. I'm TheSketchMonkey. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy.